my third year, then the overall coordinator for STAB, which it predated the ITZ. In fact, I was the last overall coordinator of STAB. All the electronics club, the robotics club, coding club, all of this. Still, it's pretty much the same structure like it is today, right? After I graduated, I joined TI. I was designing integrated circuits. I designed a couple of ADCs, a couple of really small amplifiers. So for those of you who are into electronics, you're probably familiar with the LM324, LM358. If you buy one today, it's likely a Texas Instruments amplifier, and it's likely designed by me. Apart from that, I worked on RC4580, which was an audio amplifier for applications like these, in headphones and in earphones. Really tiny amplifier. By the time I was done with the design, it was the world's cheapest audio amplifier. We used to sell it at 1 cent, I believe. I worked in TI for around 2 years. Then I started CloudChef, and I've been running CloudChef for around 2 years. I'm like far before Insta, I've been heavily into hobby electronics, just playing around with stuff at home, buying a lot of electronics, costing a lot, but too bad. I was part of the badminton team when I was at IIT. So just sports is a huge part of, is what brings me joy. A long distance running, something I'm working towards my first half marathon. I read a lot, so it's like 30, 40 books a year. That's what it looks like. I'm really, really passionate about food, which is what the company I'm building right now is all about. When I was at IIT, I'd save up money, go to South Bombay, go to great restaurants, experiment with new kinds of food I hadn't tried before. Technology, of course, that's why it's associated with STAB. I'm really into ideas that have a lot of scale, and ideas that have a lot of scale that you can create business models around, which you can then capitalize on. I'm really vocal around business models which are positive sum games that just create net value in the world and create a win-win situation for every stakeholder in that business. Apart from that, I'm a huge I study a lot of complexity science, which is the science of, practically how everything in nature works. So it's just a pet interest of mine. So today I wanted to keep it informal. So anytime on any slide, in fact, I'd prefer it if you stopped me in the middle of my slides. I don't plan this be a presentation. So I hope you can stop. I think don't bother to raise your hand. Okay, there are questions. Fine. I think just unmute yourself and ask the question. I think it'll be simpler for me too. Shubham, if you can just let them unmute themselves, I think it'll be easier.
Yeah.
Be more interactive.
I've done it.
Okay. So the question is how come I transition from electronics to the food industry? Let me just cover that in the next slide when I talk about why I started up and why I think anyone should start up. So anyway, I'm just to give a brief overview. I'm going to talk about why I quit my job and started up, about CloudChef, what I'm building right now, and why I feel it's worth my time to start this particular company. And I'd also like to talk about I'd also like to talk about the asymmetric upside of starting up. Essentially, why I think each of you should consider starting up. I'll also be talking about the lies people say about failing and about how bad it is. I'll also talk about how clueless most advisors you get in the startup ecosystem are, and why they're clueless. And I'd like to cover today a few observations and best practices I've picked up in the last 2 years while I've been running this. Right. So about Cloud Chef, I'm gonna. So I was working at TI. It was a really fun job to me. I was designing these amplifiers that were really cutting edge and hence really exciting to build. So unlike a lot of stories about people who were dissatisfied with their job and hence decided to start up, my story is quite the opposite, where I was quite satisfied, enjoying it, and still decided to start up. Right. So obviously I was a huge foodie. Like I barely know anyone who's as passionate about food as I am. And I was at TI in Bangalore, away from home, uh, trying to figure out why I couldn't get great. Hey, this session is being recorded. Okay, that's good. So I was trying to figure out why I couldn't get great food in Bangalore. I mean, I'd grown up in a home where I felt that the food I got at home was really high quality, and I wanted similar quality food. Uh, Most of the food I got from outdoor was greasy, wasn't, and not tailored to me. So I was in touch with a co-founder of mine who had started another company in his third year of college. It was a sound technology company in the US. They were working in very closely with a lot of musicians and artists. We were just talking to each other, and we figured that these musicians, they had a lot of scale, in the sense that if you were a great musician, you could go to a recording studio, record your music, put it out on the internet, and literally anyone sitting anywhere in the world could listen to it. But the situation was very different for a chef. When he created a recipe, he could uh, the only thing he could do was work in a restaurant kitchen, either cooking the food himself, cooking his recipes himself, or supervising junior staff, and creating value in a kilometer radius around him. So that's when we realized there was a huge opportunity here if we could give the same sort of scale to chefs that musicians have today. So we then started off with the thesis that if hypothetically you could build out robotic kitchens that could do exactly what a chef was doing, uh, and you had a network of such kitchens, then a chef could walk into a recording studio where you recorded what he was doing, then replicated it in each of these kitchens that you had, and delivered the food to consumers. So we started working on such a robotic kitchen concept. We have an MVP up today in Powai, in fact. So next time you're in Insta, probably you can order something from there. uh, so the reason I transitioned from the electronics industry to the food industry was purely because I was really passionate about this specific idea, and uh, and I didn't see any other way it was going to happen unless I built it myself. That's pretty much it. I don't know. Does that answer your question, or is it?
Yeah, the person says his query is answered, I guess. I received both the thoughts.
Okay. Is the electrical department overhyped, as it's considered as one of the toughest and growing business skills? Sorry, is the electrical department overhyped, as it's considered as one of the toughest and growing business skills? I'm sorry, I don't understand this question. Can you, Shubham, can you unmute them so that I can?
They are allowed to
Yeah.
unmute themselves, so they can
Yeah.
unmute themselves.
Yeah. So I would prefer it if you'll just ask your questions as goes. As it. Sarthak Mittal, do you have a question?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
you are.
Yeah. I just wanted to know, like, how did you manage like academics with the ongoing developing mainly business skills and like working in other clubs that you mentioned. So
Yeah. Okay. So one, I don't think academics at Insta takes up a lot of time. In even if you're giving it enough time so that your grades are great, you still get an easy 3-4 hours every day. At the very least 3 hours every day. For instance, one of my employees right now, he is working with us while he was at IIT, and that's far more time commitment than I uh, ever gave to the clubs that I was working with uh, when I was there. So, and I do think you get a lot of free time. I think it's partly a question of managing your time so that one, I firmly believe that Insta is more about these things and less about what you learn in the classrooms. So uh, I think it's super important that you take out the time, and if that partially hits your academics, I think it's okay. I think grades are highly overrated, in my opinion. Uh, but I did not start in terms of honing my business skills. I don't think I honed any of my business skills while I was at Insta. I uh, I think the best way to build business skills is to start a business. Does that answer your question, Sadak?
yeah, yeah.
Okay, sure. If you have any follow-up questions, you just. Okay.
Yeah, hello.
Yes. Who's this?
Hello, Atish. My name is Dinesh. I want to know about the licensing thing in a food business. Like, what are the licenses needed for us, if you are doing the food business?
Are you starting a food business?
Uh, yeah, like I'm working on one idea, but not sure. Like,
I think, I mean, the way I see it is start it anyway. The licenses are the easiest part of the business to figure out. It's licenses
but
are just about a question of, yeah, come again. Yeah.
actually, I was taking a mentoring from one of the mentor from the startup field. So he was telling like, due to multiple license, you have to like spend so much money on the to get the license from. Like if you are having the different restaurants or different kitchens, then you need like license for each kitchen, and that put up lots of cost in your business. So like how I can reduce the cost
Correct.
for
I mean,
this?
uh, obviously, you should budget out 2 lakhs or so for licensing for any kitchen that you open. But my point being that if your startup has enough scale and is an exciting enough business, 2 lakhs is a very small amount of money to uh, get financing for. Uh, you to start anything that has scale, which is the kind of businesses I believe people should start. You primarily need you usually need to get funded, and uh, in the funding landscape, 2 lakhs, which is the amount of money you'd need to license out to get a license for a kitchen, is a pretty tiny sum.
My question was that since your idea is very extensive, like it would need a lot of research and R&D and then develop a MVP, basically a lot of cash to burn, and a later part of your business you would make revenue, right? So how do you find investors who are willing to pitch on you and your idea itself? Like you don't have an MVP, you don't have traction right now, but then you still have investors. You still brought up those, like you said, 2 lakhs is a like not a big of a
Correct.
deal when your idea is ambitious. So how do you find investors who are ready to invest on you just based on your ambition?
Correct. So, firstly, I to build out an MVP does for a business like mine, for instance, does require a significant amount of cash. For instance, when we started this, we raised around $250,000. That's around 2 crores, a little over 2 crores, uh, with just the idea, with no product, no MVP,
Oh,
nothing. Okay. So capital is like I believe that while you're at Insta, you do feel like capital is pretty scarce. but capital is the easiest part of your business to tackle. So if you aren't able to convince people that this is worth building, then you probably need one you need to search, you need to be talking to more people and find some people, a couple of people who do believe in it. For instance, the typical angel check acceptance rate would be 1 in 50 or so. So you'd need to make like 50 pitches to credible investors. By credible, I mean people whom you expect to get this right. For instance, in this case, the kind of people I would talk to if I was building this business again would be the best restaurateurs in India. You would expect them to get it, or the best tech investors in India. You'd expect them to get it. So, and even after you talk to such people, we're talking about a hit rate of around 1 in 50, 130, 1 in 50. So it's a lot of
And
work.
how do you reach out to them? Like I've heard that cold emailing and cold contact is basically useless when it comes, because already after pitch your acceptance rate is 1 in 50, right? So you basically, there's a lot of the numbers basically say that cold contact is not useful. So how do you find investors and then reach out to them? Like as a like how did you do it?
Got it. So, the in our case, it was a bit easier. I mean, the investment that closed was a bit easier. We did a lot of reach out before that, but the primary networks we used were alumni networks and startup networks, right? So once you start talking to some alumni from Insti and they connect you to other founders, like for instance, if you have a great idea and you reach out to me, even if I'm not interested, obviously I can't invest in it, but I would put you in touch with other people who, if I found it exciting enough, I would get behind it and introduce you to other people who'd be in a position to support you in something like this. So it's primarily networking through people you know, and coming from Insti, the networks are pretty strong. I mean, the alumni networks are really, really strong. But you need to have something that's really exciting that motivates someone like me to go out of my way and introduce you to people.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah. Like for instance, what we were building, what was exciting about it was that it was completely and brutally disrupting the restaurant industry. After we built this, it made zero sense for anyone to ever start a delivery kitchen. And that's exciting.
Like yeah, really, I didn't know that there is a your kitchen in Powai. Next time I am in NST, yeah.
Yeah, try it out. Good.
Hello, good evening. We are working on an idea, and but we lack the skills to develop an app. Like we do not have any experience of building or not the skills either right now. So and currently we are a team of two. So should we go about finding a technical co-founder? Is it a necessity, or how should we proceed?
Yeah, here I have a slide for you. Okay, so the when you're starting up, you must remember that what you're building is not the product you're building. What you're building is the company, and uh, your how your company evolves is at the beginning in your hands, but as it scales, you lose more and more control of how it evolves. And the reason that happens is, for instance, let's say you hire a bunch of guys who have the wrong idea about what kind of people they should go ahead and hire. uh, they go ahead and hire people who just build bad products, right? And that becomes your company then. So what's super important early is to one, hire hire only the best. They have an asymmetric impact on the outcome of how great your company is. So in your case, if you do not have the skills to develop this app by yourself, since you're in college and honestly your burn rate is practically zero, I would say learn how to develop an app. One, but if there is time sensitivity involved, yes, go ahead and hire a technical co-founder. Uh, but nothing over that. I mean, one technical co-founder should be enough if what you're building is an app to come up with an MVP for an app. But only very high quality, because like don't hire him because he can do the job and you can't. Hire him because he's super passionate about the cause, about the product that you want to build too, and also possesses the skills to help you towards that cause. Right? Not just because he possesses the skills to do it.
Can you please explain a bit about I'm confused about how the cloud chef works. Like it's a network of cloud kitchens, or like do you take direct deliveries or like orders? Uh, how
Correct.
does it work?
So right, if you are a restaurant brand, and a restaurant brand, a chef, or anyone who wants to sell food, right? Let me just call you a brand for now. And let's say I have a cloud chef. I have cloud chef kitchens in 1,000 locations in India. You come to me. You come to a recording studio of mine. You record the menu that you want to serve with us. You can then instantly go live in any number of these 1,000 locations that we have, and you can digitally manage your inventory. You can say, okay, I want to pre-prep uh, 20 portions of chicken stew every day for the next 1 week, so that whenever in so and so location, so that whenever an order comes, I can service a consumer. We do that. We have a revenue sharing deal with you, and everyone makes money.
Okay, so like the ongoing Zomato and Swiggy like online delivery hubs that we have, they aren't a big competition because I guess they are.
They're more focused on the logistics layer of delivery. So initially, a company like us, I mean, and which is what we're doing, we would enlist on Swiggy. We would enlist the brands that operate out of our kitchen on Swiggy. So, for instance, uh, let's say there's a Paradise Biryani in a brand which is in Hyderabad, and they decide to go live in our Powai kitchen. They would be listed on Swiggy as Paradise Biryani. You could order it. It would be made in our kitchen and delivered to you via Swiggy. But they would not have to physically train any staff or physically have any operational involvement in running this outlet.
Okay, so like basically you help the different brands to expand their things in different cities.
Correct.
Like they can, yeah.
Without any operational involvement from their side.
Okay.
So, did you perfected that process of creating the food?
Oh yeah. So the way we look at it is we have a bunch of ingredients and a bunch of cooking processes that we uh, let these chefs and restaurateurs leverage to create their recipes. Whatever they create under this is kind of their IP, and they can then sell food under it. Right? So right now we do all of Indian cuisine. We do a bunch of Thai cuisine. Uh, Basically, Asian cuisine is something we've mastered pretty well. We've barely scratched the surface on a lot of the Western cuisines. So we've had some of the best chefs in India come in, uh, record a recipe. We recreate it. We typically take around half an hour to digitize the recipe, recreate it, make them do a blind test, and they can't tell the difference.
So
Yeah.
like why would any chef records his or her recipe in the cloud chef? Because like it's getting copied, no? Like he might
Correct.
be getting uh, uh, revenue out of it, but still.
Because he's getting revenue out of it. Because as a chef, he wants to make money, and right now the amount of money he can make physically working in a kitchen is highly capped because he doesn't have scale. So think of that's the same as asking the question, why does a musician go to a recording studio and record his music? Why not only do live performances?
Okay. And just one more question. Just when you approach your first restaurant, so like till at that time you didn't had any contacts, and you didn't had any contacts to show them like how we had this much brand and we have this much operations going on. So like on what basis they trusted you regarding this thing?
Right. So that's an ongoing process. It is always a challenge to get these restaurant brands to uh, put their brand behind a new concept like this. So typically, a warm reach out seemed to have helped us very well. Wherein we've raised a really good quality capital from a bunch of very well reputed investors, and specifically some of them from the food industry, so that they can then make introductions to these restaurant brands, uh, and hence this introduction comes with a lot of credibility. For that's that's typically helped us out a lot. Cold introductions, cold emails, cold reach outs to these restaurant brands typically has this problem where there's a trust issue. It's a new concept. Is it worth doing, especially in an MVP stage, right? I mean, it's worth it for a restaurant brand when I have 1,000 kitchens to record their recipes and go live in 1,000 locations and make a shit ton of money. But when I have just one location, it's the upside of doing so is barely anything. So there needs to be a warm introduction uh, that kind of reassures the customer uh, that this is not going to go sour. This is worth working on. Obviously, one of the things we do is we excite them about the upside. For instance, our next kitchen that we're planning is in San Francisco, and uh, this is very exciting for an Indian brand. There is no way right now they have the opportunity to open an outlet in the US and start making money there. But we offer them a path by which they can. And the way we pitch it is that, look, we have this MVP going on in Powai, and the only way you're going live in the US is if you do it first year with us.
Atish,
Hello.
okay, I'll go on.
Yes.
I had a question that you said that you'll be digitizing the recipe once somebody comes to you and records the recipe. So, what is that digitization exactly? And I mean, at a MVP scale, it's very easy to ensure that whatever you digitize is not being like stolen by some of your employees, or like it's not being, because your customers are trusting you with that. Your recipe, their recipe will be safe with you. So how will you try to
Correct.
ensure that?
Yeah. So that's a good question. But there's an interesting angle to this, which is right now their recipes are ridiculously, one, unstandardized, and two, insecure already. Uh, the easiest way for me to get that recipe, if I did not want to partner with them, was to go and poach an employee of theirs. But I wouldn't do it, because the business model here is for both of us to work together, them to put their brand behind the food. For instance, let's say take the example of Goila butter chicken. He's a chef who runs a butter chicken brand. He was a guest judge in MasterChef Australia. Uh, they have outlets all over Bombay. Right now, they have one in London, couple in Pune, couple in Bangalore. If I go and copy his recipe and start selling this butter chicken, it probably won't sell. It sells because it's Goila's butter chicken. It doesn't sell because it's a great butter chicken.
Yeah, that's true.
There's there's zero upside for me to do it, for me to steal it, and there is it's already very easy to steal it. It's, in fact, if anything, it is an order of magnitude more difficult for it to get stolen from a system like ours than for it to get stolen by someone just poaching an employee of theirs.
It does make sense.
Yeah.
Oh, so Atish, so I had rather a strange question, it may seem, but I really tried to search about CloudSafe before this session, and I even went to the website that they had mentioned in the message, but I couldn't find any info. So, can you
Correct.
just give us a quick walkthrough through your company and your journey?
Yeah, sure. So we started this in 2018. The reason you can't find us is because the kitchen is we're just setting it, getting it live. And we're not customer facing; we're brand facing. So even once we do go live, uh, you'll just be able to discover these brands in these locations. But CloudChef is behind the scenes. So we started this in 2018. We raised some angel money, like I said, $250,000 right when we started. Then we spent. Initially, we wanted to just see if this was even possible to do. So we started with something simple. We started with tea. We started with making a reliable cup of masala chai that is made on the roads of Bombay, exactly like uh, one particular chai wala who did this in Dada for the last 25 years did it. And we partnered with Goli Vada Pav, which is a Vada Pav chain. They have 200, 200 300 outlets in India, primarily outside Bombay, Bangalore, etc. Uh, on this, we built it out. They were quite happy with it. They wanted us to make more of it. We realized that we did not want to become an equipment manufacturing company that made these equipments to make certain items and sell it to other restaurants. We thought that the vision was much bigger than that. So we decided not to pursue that, which was and it was quite disappointing for Goli. But we then went on this cloud kitchen route where we started setting up, designing a kitchen where you could actually service an entire menu of items uh, and operate brands out of the space digitally without any operational involvement. So that required us to first master certain cuisines like Indian cuisine. We started off with Indian cuisine. Started off with doing curries and rice. Tried to see if we could do that reliably. There was the food science angle. We had to study different cooking processes to understand what were the real variables you needed to capture when recording a recipe, so that you could recreate it reliably. Uh, that process took so the whole the whole initial process to prove out whether we could at least make teas, soups, basic items took let's say 8 months or so, six to 8 months. And since then for the last 1.5 year we've been building this out, and now we've uh, now we have a first kitchen up, and we've raised another round to set up this kitchen and open a couple of more kitchens. We are a team of how many? We are a team of 8 people right now.
So you might be sourcing the ingredients nearby the outlet, right?
Can you hold on? I'm gonna just put my charger for the.
Yeah, sure.
Hi. Yeah, go ahead. What's your question?
Yeah. So you must be sourcing the ingredients from the nearby stores, like all the vegetables whatsoever needed for the food. So how do you take into account the variation in taste?
That's a
Like
good
the
question.
tomato in
So
India might be different from that of US.
correct. That's a good question. So one thing that's interesting that we realized is that there is a significant amount of tolerance when you're recreating food in the ingredient itself. But for certain ingredients, you do need to look at specific cues for how long you need to saute onions before they get brown. For instance, a chef would typically look at the visual color of it, and that's what we do. We use computer vision to identify whether the color of the onion while it's being sauteed is correct before we go on to the next step. But that does not solve for the situation that you mentioned. Like the tomatoes in the US may be less sweet than the tomatoes in India. And hence, even if you follow the exact same recipe, you may not end up with something as good. So, in such situations where the ingredient supply chain itself is drastically different, we get those ingredients and record on those ingredients. Does it answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah. So typically in countries like the US, it's very easy to run massive geographies on the same supply chain of ingredients. In India, definitely the supply chains are far more fragmented than in a country like the US.
We were working on few ideas from the past 3 to 4 months. Like actually, we discussed many of them, and quite a few of them we researched on. We built our BMC, building our business model canvas, and at a later stage we realized that we should not be doing this. Like this is not something we should be doing, or we do not have skills to do the same. So, how should we actually, first of all, at the ideation stage, clarify that if this idea is viable and if we are the one who should be doing this?
Yeah. So I think the uh, the only reason to start a company, I believe, is that if you are really passionate about a certain problem and you feel compelled to do it. And I feel that a lack of skills is sometimes a good thing. If you're an outsider to an industry, uh, it gives you a very unique perspective, and that is probably why you can come up with this unique solution to the problem, or this unique new mode of operating uh, for that particular industry. For instance, I strongly believe that if I was in the restaurant industry, there's no way I'd be thinking of how to disrupt it. Right? I'd be thinking of how to make incremental improvements on how that particular industry could work. But as an outsider, I can zoom out and just think of a new way of how this entire industry can work. Right? And that's why I think if you feel that you do not have the necessary skills to run a certain company, you can hire for it, but that's not a good reason to not build that company.
Many a times from our mentors, we listen that, and also by reading that for starting a company, like you should zoom in and pick a particular problem. Like you should be focusing on a very single problem proposition and do work on that to your best and then scale up. So how do we actually ensure that okay, this is exactly the problem? We know certain problems that a particular industry is facing. So
Right.
there are certain aspects of it, like for example, if there is a lack of management of transportation in the transportation industry, but why this is the problem, there are many problems behind that as well. So how we specifically choose a problem and ensure that okay, now this is the problem we should be solving?
Got it. That's an interesting question. So uh, I believe that uh, what you're asking is essentially the same question as asking how do you define your MVP? Because your MVP cannot be broad. Your MVP cannot be I'm going to completely disrupt this industry. It's something that you're going to build with a team of probably 4 to 5 people. And that is why it has to be specific. To build something that people love with a team of 4 people, it has to be a very specific problem. And uh, 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 right. And so what you want to do is you want to formulate your MVP so that there is, even though your larger vision is this grandiose thing, what you want to do is you want to define an MVP so that there is a subset of your users who get that same experience that your fully realized vision would give to all of your users. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes. And also, while solving that particular problem, we have to start with a solution to it. If I'm building an app, so of course there are already a lot of competitors. Like it is not that we will be bringing an Einstein idea that no one has till now worked on. So it is quite difficult to
Why
see
not?
through it. Uh, there are a lot of competition already out there. So how should we proceed with that?
Then the question is, why are you building it? I mean, the only reason I believe you should build something is that you are really passionate about this problem being solved. And the only way to do it is to solve it yourself. If there's someone else doing it, it's probably not. If somebody is doing exactly what you have in mind, then maybe you should join them and help them build it. Like, why not?
Atish, I have a question for you. If you're a very early stage startup and you're given, say, 1 lakh rupees as like equity free funding, and
Yeah.
so how do, if you are doing service as software as a service startup, how do you
Yeah.
allocate resources like for R&D, marketing, team development, and all the other stuff?
With 1 lakh rupees, I would use it for food. But so I'm sorry. But yeah, with 1 lakh
No,
rupees,
actually, 1 lakh rupees was like take 100 rupees so that the
indicative. Yeah,
distribution.
got it. Got it. I understand. So, I mean, it's hard to say. It really depends on the specific on the specific product you're building and the allocation that you require to for this to be realized. I do believe that at a very early stage, you should spend barely anything on marketing. You should be targeting a very small. So two things that don't scale, right? That's right on the screen. So two things that don't scale. Talk to a very small, like you're an early stage startup. You you require only a very small number of users. Get it organically. Don't try to market your way into getting your users to use your product. Go physically to your friends, get them to download your, if it's a SaaS, like I said, software as a service, right? So get your, is it something your friends would use? If it is, get them to use it. If they love it, they'll tell their friends about it, or get them to tell their friends about it. Do it unscalably until it picks up traction. Marketing money is not to get your business started, it's to help your business scale.
And one more question. You mentioned that you are a team of 8 people, right? And
Correct.
you're a co-founder of this business. So right now, what would differentiate you as a co-founder rather than that you ideated the concept? What would differentiate you from the founding team or the 8 members? Like
That's
basically, they are after you thought of this idea, they're with you, right? So what would differentiate?
No, not really. We worked on this for a good 6 months before we hired anyone. So it was three of us who started it, and we worked on it for a good 6 months, yeah, before we. And I was thinking about this idea for me, and my co-founders were thinking about this idea and doing groundwork around it for a year before we even left our job, start the company. So what if that's the time that differentiates us, and we own different percentages of the company which reflects that.
And I mean, this is getting a bit into your financials, but if you're comfortable, since they are your first employees, do you pay them a recurring salary or do you pay them in equity?
Both. So the way I look at it is a salary in a startup, which is an early stage. Your salary so that you can live comfortably, so that you can, so that you don't have to think about the money, so that you can think about the problems that you have to solve. And the equity is for you to, have upside in the problems that you solve. So we do both. In fact, I'm open about it. We we give a disproportionately high equity to employees, full-time employees that we hire. Like we like 40% of our founder stock, 40% is reserved for employees we hire in the future.
Yeah, thank you.
I have one question regarding the way we should approach our first customers, like you told us about, like organically going to them and asking them to download our app. So we are working in agricultural sector. So for me, it is not physically possible to approach a farmer, and our product or service is related to them only. So how should we connect to them and uh, get our product in acknowledgement of their daily working?
I think you'll have to talk to them. I mean, if you're selling to a customer, you have to be a customer segment. You have to be talking to that customer segment. If it is physically not possible for you to do so, I don't know. It's difficult in my opinion, because I think it's a very crucial part about building a great product for them that you talk to them and know how what you're building is impacting them. Know what problems they have. Know whether you're building something that's absolutely useless to them or super useful to them. Know what features are uh, uh, know what features they're particularly interested in and excited about amongst the features that you've built. So although I do believe that on the contrary, I do believe that you should not go and talk to your customers to find out what to build. You should go and find out talk to your customers to find out what aspects of what you've built they hate or they love. It's like that famous Henry Ford thing, right? Where he says that if you asked people what they wanted, they'd say faster horses. So, but yeah, once you're building something, you need, and you're getting people to use it, you want to be talking to your users to find out what aspects of it they love or hate.
One more doubt, like just last, how do you like regularly maintain a feedback from your customers? Because what I find while working is that it is quite difficult to get people reviews. Like people are very lazy while giving feedback. I mean, I'm not talking about others. I can give example of mine as well. Like for course feedbacks, profs ask, but I'm so lazy. I don't give any attention to it. I have never filled so many feedback forms, so it is kind of difficult to get what the customer might be looking for.
Then it's the wrong product, because if you truly care about a product that you're using, so when at an early stage you do not want to target the mass market, you want to target a very small subsection of the mass market who desperately needs this product that you're building. And someone who desperately needs this, let's say I have family in the US and you are building a product which is the only way I can today that I can send money to them in the US. I'm going to give you feedback about that product. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to be. I'm not going to give you half-hearted feedback. I'm going to really tell you what problems I'm facing. So, uh, if you're building something that's meaningful enough to your users, they will give you feedback. That's yeah. That's it.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Can you tell us more about the first 6 months before the first hire?
Okay, yeah, that's pretty crazy. We started in Bangalore because I was working in Bangalore. One of my co-founders was my flatmate in Bangalore, and my other co-founder was in the US at the time and had just returned. He came to Bangalore as well. We were bunking in an apartment. We'd taken a co-working space, which we were paying for from our own pockets. We negotiated heavily. In fact, I think we got like a month free in 4 co-working spaces by saying that we wanted to try it out for a week, and then we'd move out to the next space and say we wanted to try it out for a week. we spent considerable time coming up with some uh, basic controls to be able to make a cup of tea. Right. We spent a lot of time reading about cooking because we had we were complete outsiders, right? And then we eventually made a crucial decision about moving to Bombay. One, because Insti, the hiring pipeline was definitely better. We did end up hiring people from Insti. The manufacturing scene in Bombay was great versus Bangalore. We didn't know the local language in Bangalore, which is pretty crazy if you want to start a company and be on the ground. Right? Uh, so we moved to Bombay. We worked on an MVP for 6 months for the tea making setup. We reached out to Goli Vada Pav's founder through some personal connect, pitched it to him. Uh, he was very interested in it because he was facing a huge standardization problem when he tried to have chai in his outlets. Every operator in a new outlet would make a different kind of chai, and uh, yeah, people just didn't trust the chai that was available at Koli Vada Pav outlets because of that. So we started working on that, and then once that was up, we spent considerable time behind that. Once that was up and running, uh, we showed it to them. They were interested. They wanted us to make more. Then we zoomed out. We thought about it, and we decided that no, we should not make more. And we had this whole vision in mind. That's when we went and hired more. Yep.
Basically, who is your competition at present? Like one of them are local restaurant owners that are selling their food in the particular
Correct.
city that your clouds are. And other than those, like you can also approach to them and ask them like you can uh, make them expand in other cities. So it's sort
Correct.
of like it cuts your competition. But other than this, that's a major competition.
So, that's one very interesting thing about this. Today, there is no way a restaurant can scale seamlessly from location to location, and hence, by definition, there is no competition in for us. There's no competition that's doing what we're doing, but the way I look at it is anyone that serves food in a location is competition, right? So local restaurants is competition. Cloud kitchens. There's a concept called a cloud kitchen wherein, in fact, Uber's ex-founder Travis Kalanick, he runs a company called Cloud Kitchens uh, today. So they raised like $1 billion or so, and what the cloud kitchen business is they rent out a large space, like let's say 10,000 square feet of space. They then sublease fully furnished with equipment uh, blocks of 300 square feet spaces to other to restaurant brands. These restaurant brands can then train and put in staff into those subleased 300 square feet blocks and operate out of those locations. They're kind of a competitor to us because they help restaurants scale too, but they help restaurants scale. Restaurants still need to go and train staff for every new outlet, which is typically a month or a 2 month process, and requires constant checks, constant quality, constant retraining, etc. So yeah, they're competition. It's a significantly different model, but you could say they're competition.
And just one more thing, like regarding in your case, the first funding or like the seed funding was like mandatory. But if we have a business model that doesn't can go through, like it can build a MVP without a first investment. So like we should go
That's
for a
great.
bootstrap. We should go
Of
for a
course you should.
bootstrap.
Don't raise money unless you need it.
Because
Don't
I
raise money unless you need it.
Yeah, I personally think like it dilutes the equity if we once starts raising the money at an early stage.
Correct. No, of course. I mean, if your business is the kind that can build an MVP, that can start getting traction with users uh, without any funding, then why would you want funding? I mean, it's one, it dilutes you. Two, you have you have you now have partners in the business who are, I mean, the financiers, right? Your partners in the business uh, who you're not well acquainted with. You would not start this company with them if it were not for the money. So unless you absolutely need the money to start up, to get this thing to take off, you shouldn't. You should bootstrap. That's correct. But also think of once you do start getting traction with your users, funding is a good way to help you grow fast. Is it good? Okay,
Yeah, it's
to disclose your idea at an early stage to people / anyone. Yeah, I personally believe that it is. One interesting thing about disruptive ideas is that most people think they're not great ideas. So, I mean, it's fine. I've never heard of a company that, I don't know, please tell me if you can think of any, that has failed because they disclosed their idea at an early stage to anyone. The Winklevoss twins, I guess.
Hello, sir.
I don't think they failed because of that. Yeah.
I'm a fresher, and I just recently got to know about the business culture at IIT Bombay. I don't have much experience, so one thing that surprised me in your introduction was you said that the stories about failing entrepreneurs are not that realistic, and it's actually not that bad. Could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah. So the entire startup ecosystem has a lot of noise and barely any signal. And there's a very simple reason for this. Uh, there's a lot of luck involved in both success and failure in when you're starting up, right? So you want to, if you talk to a successful entrepreneur and ask him why he succeeded, it's very hard for him to. I mean, he may say some things, but you may do the exact same things and still fail. Uh, in fact, I do think you should talk to the people who fail, because it's far easier to figure out why people failed than why people succeeded. Because failures, I mean, it's very, although even that's tricky, because I mean, you should try it out. You should try talking to a founder, and you'll hear things like, we couldn't get product market fit. We uh, we couldn't get funded. That's why we failed. But you don't get funded because you're not a good business to fund typically. I mean, that's like a founder won't tell you that uh, that his business wasn't a great business to fund. He'll tell you that the people just didn't see the value, like investors just didn't see the value in it. It's also very likely that it wasn't such a valuable business. It's also very likely that he wasn't able to convey how valuable the business was. So there's a lot of randomness and a lot of uh, I mean, if a founder fails for a certain reason, it's very difficult for him also to pinpoint why he's failed sometimes. So you'll hear a lot of reasons that may make sense to you, but may not be the actual reason why someone failed. So it's very difficult to. So I think a bottom line, just do what makes sense to you from first principles. Listen to all these stories that people tell you about, what worked for them, what did not. But don't look for patterns too much. Like just for your specific business, understand from first principles why this is a good business, why is this a bad business, and what is the best way to build it out. That is the only thing that matters.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there any other questions? So past 8, I mean, but maybe you can take a couple of more minutes if there are any questions.
I had a question. Uh, I, I personally come up with a bunch of ideas, but how do we know that that particular idea is scalable or not? As you said in your case, there was a dilemma where you had to make a machine that would be a recipe centric, and then you rather chose a path of making a generic machine. So that was a question where you would have gone through the trade-offs and figured out what is the more scalable option, right? So how do you
Yes.
know that your idea is scalable and what path to choose in the way?
I mean, if you can figure out a path by which this idea becomes big and every stakeholder in that chain makes money, that's a scalable idea. The economics have to make sense at scale. The idea is to get more and more defensible as it scales. So, for instance, I keep giving this example of because I'm in the food space of Swiggy, right? Like food delivery. It sounds like a scalable model. The economics start making more and more sense as you have more and more riders and as you have more and more restaurants working with you. But for instance, it is scalable, but it's not defensible because uh, anyone could pump in a large amount of money to make a delivery app just for Powai that works better. And as someone who stays in Powai, I don't care how big Swiggy is and in how many cities uh, it has a presence in. I only care about what gives me the best experience in Powai. But on the other hand, something like Amazon, you have the more and more vendors they get onto Amazon, and the more and more customers they get onto Amazon, the more and more valuable Amazon as a platform becomes for everyone involved. That's both a scalable business and a defensible business. So, and again, first principles, just think about whatever your idea is, whether as you scale it, the economics continue to make sense, or maybe they start making sense at scale, and maybe they don't make sense at a small scale, right? If that is true, your business is scalable. And also think about if someone had a lot of money, whether they'd be able to come and build out something that beats this or uh, competes with this. If that is true, it is still scalable, but it's going to be hard to capitalize on it because competition really really kills business margins.
Okay, got it. But in your case, even in the first scenario, if you had made a recipe-centric machine, it would still be the scalable, right? A lot of other burger making companies have pitched in to make similar products for them too. But
Correct.
how do you?
That is a scalable business too. But the upside of that business we felt is far tinier than platformizing the entire restaurant industry. So, and that's the interesting thing about ideas that have a very large upside. One, because it's exciting, because the upside is so big, you can get better and better people to work on them. You can get better and better partners to, in our case, restaurant partners, to partner with you to build this out. You can get better advisors, you can get better investors, because the whole thing is exciting. If you're an equipment manufacturer for restaurants, it's it's not so exciting. Does that answer your question, Peter?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Cool. I think we're pretty much out of time. Mm, but I'm just gonna type my email ID in the chat box. If anyone has any questions, just feel free to reach out and we can schedule a call sometime. That's fine too. Cool. Great. Nice chatting with you guys. If you all have any questions, reach out.
I have one last question. Can I ask?
Yeah, Sarthak, go ahead.
Yeah, like you have a kitchen in Powai right now, and like if you have a restaurant from maybe Indore on board. So like
Yeah.
it should be the Indore's best, then only the people of Powai or people of Mumbai would be knowing it. And like if they aren't knowing that particular restaurant or that particular brand, so it would be like a normal kitchen or normal restaurant for them to go
That is
and
correct.
like have.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So there's something that's called a. So you need to really, whenever you're building out something like a platform, especially, two in our case, it's a two-sided platform. You have customers on one side and you have these brands on the other side, and you're kind of connecting the two, right? You, like I said, you need to figure out for an MVP what is the subset of your users that are most impacted by what you're building. In our case, we figured that look, at scale, all of this sounds beautiful, makes sense, but that doesn't mean you should start building it randomly. You should you should identify the users that really miss a certain kind of food and really want that food. Uh, for which is why, although we're building the Powai kitchen, it's more of a trial kitchen. The next kitchen we're building is in San Francisco, and we're taking great Indian food to San Francisco, which has a massive Indian population with a lot of money but eats shitty Indian food. So you take known Indian brands or even unknown Indian brands with 10 times better food quality to a population that has a shit ton of money, and it's easy to get it, to make it popular.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Where did you put your email? Okay. 1 minute. I think I didn't send it to everyone. Cool. I've sent my email on the chat. I think you should be able to see it now. Yeah. Great. Just message me privately on my email for any further questions. And yeah, we can chat.
Thank you, Atish. It was really nice.
Thanks, Shubham. Thanks for moderating.
And
Thank
thank
you.
you all for attending.